But I wanted to share with you and really ask the question, what's it going to take for the average American voter who has not figured this out, who has not figured out the Republican scam that they're running on this country? What's it going to take for the average American voter to essentially wake up to how badly things have been corrupted and damaged by Trump and the Republican Party and their blockage of anything good at the federal level, frankly? And I start out with the story of Raymania, or Demonia, of Cullman, Alabama. Ray was a good and decent man. He was an antique collector and auctioneer. He was beloved by his family and friends. He was vaccinated, nothing to worry about there. And 2 days short of his 74th birthday, he died of a heart attack. But that's only part of the story. On August 18th, the mayor of Cullman, Alabama, the town where Ray lived, Woody Jacobs, declared a state of emergency because the town's hospitals were overwhelmed with unvaccinated COVID patients. Alabama has the second lowest vaccination rate in the United States. 2 days later, 2 days after that emergency declaration, an out-of-town huckster brought 50,000 unmasked and mostly unvaccinated people to this little town of 15,000, Cullman, Alabama, kicking off one of the nation's largest super spreader events. So when Ray, 2 days after that, on August 23rd, had his heart attack, and his family took him to the local hospital was like, we're maxed out. Sorry, we got no ICU beds. We can't deal with you. And they started calling other hospitals. And as his family pointed out in his obituary, they called 43 hospitals in 3 states before they finally found a cardiac ICU bed 200 miles away in Meridian, Mississippi, which is where they took him. And a few days later, Ray died, and this delay could not have helped. I mean, we can't say for sure that it caused him to die, but it certainly couldn't have helped. But that's only part of the story. That super spreader event in Cullman was hosted by the nation's most famous white nationalist, white supremacist, racist, Donald Trump. Why did he pick Cullman? Well, I'm not sure that this was the reason, but this might have factored into it. Cullman, Alabama, is the county seat of Cullman County, Alabama, a county that is 97% white, and virtually all of the black people in that county live in one little town called Colony. It used to be called The Colony, and it was The Colony to Cullman, to the county seat, the biggest town in the county. Now, what does that mean? Well, back in the day, Cullman was known as a sundown town. They had a sign, and sundown towns all over the South had these signs. As you drive into town, the sign said, N-word, don't let the sun go down on you here in Cullman. And that's why they were called sundown towns. Don't let the sun. In other words, black people were not allowed in that town after sunset. But because Cullman wanted cheap labor, they let black people carpool in from the nearby colony. They called it The Colony. It's the one black town, 93% black right now even, one black town in all of Cullman County. And it's, just down the road. And that's how Colony got named. It was called The Colony. But that's only part of the story. Let's never forget that the Trump administration was gung-ho about getting the virus under control in February and March and early April of last year. They were planning to send masks to every family in America. The post office was going to send 5 masks to every family. They had shut down a whole bunch of the economy. They were working on. I mean, they were going to do the right thing. And then came April 7th. And April 7th was the day that the New York Times, you open the New York Times and hear a screaming headline across the top letters, Black Americans face alarming rates of coronavirus infections in some states. And American conservatives responded with, what the hell? I mean, Rush Limbaugh said, and I quote, with the coronavirus, I've been waiting for the racial component. The coronavirus now hits African Americans harder than illegal aliens, harder than women. It hits African Americans harder than anybody. Disproportionate representation. That same day, Tucker Carlson, who was the only Fox News host who had actually expressed a concern about the virus, he goes on TV and he says, Well, now we can begin to consider how to improve the lives of the countless Americans who have been grievously hurt by this, by our response to this. How do we get 17 million of our most vulnerable citizens back to work? That's our task. Brit Hume comes on Tucker's show and says, the disease turned out not to be quite as dangerous as we thought. Because they thought, okay, it's killing black people, it's not killing white people, so let's do it. Which really puts the history of Coleman in stark relief when you realize that that's where Donald Trump chose this sundown town in basically a sundown county to hold his 50,000-person super spreader event rally. It's kind of an echo of Reagan's 1980, his first speech in Philadelphia, Mississippi, in the Neshoba County Fair. Which is where Schwarmer, Cheney, and Goodman were murdered, the three civil rights workers, back in June of 1964. And the theme of Reagan's speech to an all-white crowd was states' rights, and we all know what that means. And this was, by the way, 3 days after the Ku Klux Klan officially endorsed Ronald Reagan's candidacy. It's the same county fair, by the way, where Donald Trump Jr. gave his debut political speech in 2016, mentioning Reagan's appearance and saying of the Confederate battle flag, "I believe in tradition." I don't see a lot of the nonsense that's been created about that. But that's only part of the story. Yesterday, we passed a milestone in America where 1 in 500 Americans is now dead from COVID. 1 out of every 500 Americans is dead from COVID. We have more COVID cases than any country in the world. We have more COVID cases than India, which is number 2 behind us. And they have 1.3 billion people, have 340 million. They've got like 4 times the population of the United States. And we have more COVID cases than they do. We have more. The only other country that comes even close to us on a per capita basis is Brazil, which is run by little Donald Trump, Jair Bolsonaro. We're also the only country in the world where one of the 2 major political parties has decided it's to their political advantage to spread this disease around. Republicans are trying to use the pandemic to politically cripple our economy and President Joe Biden and the Democratic Party in anticipation of the election coming up in 2022 and the presidential election in 2024. But that's only part of the story. 10 days after Raymania died, Denmark opened up, as in totally open, for business, bars, restaurants, theaters, stores, sporting events, everything. Completely open, mask-free. As Agence France Presse reports, with no masks in sight, buzzing offices and concerts drawing tens of thousands, Denmark on Friday ditches vaccine passports in nightclubs, ending its last COVID curve. They celebrated the opening with a concert in Copenhagen for 50,000 people because there's no more COVID crisis in Denmark. As of yesterday, there were 13 people lingering on ventilators in the hospitals in Denmark. Across the entire country, 13 people. That's it. While we're having an ICU crisis in the South so bad that if somebody has a heart attack, they have to check 34 hospitals and airlift them 200 miles away to a different state. Now, what did Denmark do differently than we did? Well, first of all, last year they kept their numbers down by socially distancing and wearing masks. And while Donald Trump was concerned that he wouldn't get reelected if the economy sank, and so he was encouraging everybody not to wear masks and to go back to work. But secondly, once the vaccines became available at the beginning of this year, they put into place vaccine passports in early March, basically forcing everybody in the country, if you want to participate in anything that has to do with this country, if you're 12 years old or over, you've got to have a vaccine passport. So by the time that Raymania got sick with his heart attack, everybody in Denmark, other than the children, was vaccinated, fully vaccinated. And that's the real story. We could be open just like Denmark right now if we didn't have a political party, a Republican Party, that across multiple states has discouraged people from getting vaccinated. If we didn't have Fox News that discourages people from getting vaccinated, if we didn't have right-wing radio hosts like Larry Elder who discourage people from getting vaccinated, if we didn't have that, we could be open today too. Denmark has done it. And I predict in the next couple of weeks, you're going to see country after country after country following their lead. But instead, because we've got the Republican Party, we've got Fox News, we've got right-wing hate radio, and because we had Donald Trump, we're now overrun with disease and death, and our hospital workers are frightened, exhausted, and in deep despair. We get the out-of-control pandemic. Denmark gets to open. This is nuts.